The Chicago Bears building their new franchise in head coach Ben Johnson's image. And where does it start? Well, it starts up front. A big trade for an offensive lineman as teams are getting to work now post-combine and pre-free agency. We've got it all covered for you. Franchise tags and more on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Appreciate you. Let us know you stopped by. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. Let us know you were here, even though you're already subscribed, I'm sure, no doubt. And if you're new to the program, welcome. We appreciate you as well. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the audio version of this podcast. You can find us on your Amazon Fire TV and other sources as well. We are everywhere and hang out with us every day. So subscribe up and we'll take you through the off season. And it's all about the whys, I think, for me right now, Matt. It's not just the news. What is the news? Why are these moves happening right now?
Yeah,
sit in early
on time,
which fascinates me. So this is a lot of fun as teams prepare for free agency, and the Bears are not waiting around for free agency, and they are getting to work on their offensive line. And now Tuesday, a big move. Is it crazy to say that Joe Thuney, the guard from the Kansas City Chiefs that is now on his way to the Chicago Bears via trade, is kind of on a Hall of Fame track? Like, this is a really big get for the Chicago Bears, loading up on the offensive line, bringing an all-pro type of player in guard Joe Thuney, who we saw play some left tackle in a pinch for the Kansas City Chiefs down the stretch this year. And obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, we can get into why it works for them, but I want to start with the Bears. There's other things going on in the interior offensive line for both of these football teams. We talk a lot about quarterbacks, Matt. The rare interior offensive line heavy podcast that we're going to
you gotta love it.
Higgins, yeah. Joe Thuney to the Bears. What do you think about this move?
So there's a tidal wave of free agency coming. There's a tsunami ready to smash us and ruin our houses and kill the village. But the waves are picking up pretty heavy now too. I mean, I bet something happens in the next couple hours too. Like, it's just going to be constant little things. This guy gets cut. This is an extension, a small trade, blah, 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 blah. They need to get cap compliant. All those things have to happen soon. So let's just talk Bears. I mean, Bears had a lot of free agent money. They have a lot of money. So I don't want to brush over the Jonah Jackson deal either. We did talk about it last time we were together, but it's not a small thing either. I mean, that the Rams are pretty happy with Bo Limmer and Avila, and so they had an excess of interior O linemen, and he was expensive. So Ben Johnson was with Jonah Jackson with the Lions, and he's been a very good player. That's a big upgrade for them at right guard. That happened earlier. Then huge upgrade at left guard in Thuney, as you mentioned. I mean, I think he is maybe on a Hall of Fame type of pace, top 5 left guard, great in protection. And a couple things that really resonate with me are, first off, I don't think you want to go shopping in this guard market in free agency. You'd rather trade for proven commodities. And if it costs you a late pick, so be it. We have to have them. It also reminds me a year ago when the Panthers had their first overall quarterback, and they went and spent huge on 2 guards. And it kind of helped. I mean, like, if you're going to make life easier on these quarterbacks, let's not allow interior pressure. Let's try to drop the sacks, some of which I think are on Williams, but no more excuses. We need to find those, things out. And so you add 2 high-quality guards. I think we could at least make an argument that they now have the best set of guards in the league after maybe having the worst. I mean, that's a nice way to spend your free agency dollars.
And the other part of the why is obviously the Bears offensive line had to be job number one.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And I talked about this when we dropped our first mock draft, and we were just talking off the air about, okay, which is going to be a Williamson or a Peacock mock post combine. And we're working on that. We'll have that up for you real soon. But if it's a spoiler alert right now, if it's a Peacock mock, I had Will Campbell going to the Bears. Well, it's going to be Ashton Genty now going to the Bears.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing.
Right.
Yep.
And sort of starts to disqualify some players. We start to learn about what the plans are. And I think Will Campbell, he proved at the combine, awesome prospect. He might be the top offensive line in the class, right? And I think it's going to be him and Membo that are going to battle that out. Membo, I think, just better shot to stick it at tackle in the NFL than Will Campbell, as good as the film is for Will Campbell and how athletic he looked. Probably takes Will Campbell off the table. And my argument for Campbell at 10 for the Bears when I did my mock draft was you can't mess around here. You got to fix the offensive line. You can't play around and have fun. Well, maybe that gives them the opportunity to have a little bit more fun with the 10th pick in the draft. And if the highest graded player on their board is Ashton Genty, they can take him now at pick number 10. Now, there's still other needs. You could still go offensive tackle. You could still go
line.
There's Shamar Stewart, and there's some other options for the Bears. But a little spoiler here, it's going to be Ashton Genty at 10, I think, now for me, for the Chicago Bears, the way this is going. And that's the big clue to me. And we'll see how that goes. And maybe some other things will change. But that's the way I see it right now for the Chicago Bears. And they're putting in their work pre-draft so they can just go by their board when they get to the draft.
Yeah, and get some shiny pieces and fun things and playmakers on offense, or like you said, pass rushers, or defensive front guys. Now, I still think this line was in such disarray that I wouldn't be quite done, but I wouldn't mind getting a second round center. The kid from Georgia or somebody along those lines too.
If Grayson is still there, you got a couple of, I think they're drafting at like 39 and 41. They have 2 second-round picks, so they can move up.
I didn't even know that.
Let's get up here at the end of the round 1 area, and we could still draft a tackle. You could go Ursary. You could go, Gray Zabel. There's a number of different ways you could go there, and so it really just opens up the options for the Chicago Bears here to really get the meat and potatoes of their team set. So I love it. I love the move for the Bears.
And I wouldn't mind a rookie center between those two guys that have been around the block, especially Thuney. They'll make their life so much easier. And it's deeper.
And it might be a situation where they're like, man, we don't even think Armand Membo after his combine is going to get to us at 10.
He might not, right?
Tackle, and they could still go tackle at 10, right? But I just think that this is a clue on how they're looking at it, how they're looking at the board, and they're like, look, we want to get this done first. And so
I love it for the Bears,
for the Chicago Bears, and I like where they're at here. And it's just work that had to be done on the offensive line, and it's a clue that they know what they're doing and they're going about it the right way too.
Yeah, and I think Ben Johnson saying, "I've seen this show before," and Caleb Williams is taking a lot of sacks, and so we've mentioned all the reasons, and I think this is a very logical first step to the offseason if you're the Chicago Bears.
Now, for a team that the biggest need potentially of the offseason is offensive line, the Kansas City Chiefs. We just saw them get destroyed up front. They traded their best offensive lineman away. So from the Chiefs' perspective, and with their other guard, Trey Smith, getting the franchise tag, is this just all about, well, we choose one, and we're going to choose the younger guy, and we're going to trade the older guy? But they have work to do, and immediately they still have needs on the offensive line. And if you're basing your mock drafts on this one move, well, best offensive lineman available is going to the Kansas City Chiefs now at pick 31.
Yeah, and this worries me a little from Kansas City's perspective. And for people who remember, listen to the last show, Odighizuwa from the Cowboys got the franchise tag, and since then they extended him. Like, I'm hoping and expecting the Chiefs do the same thing, maybe as soon as we stop hit record. Like, that might come down, Smith signs a 4-year deal, and then all of a sudden you're down eating that guaranteed money for 1 year. You spread it out, and it gives you some cap relief as well. Thuney's off the books. Smith is not the franchise tag. Okay. And your right side of the line is fine. Humphrey, although I don't think Taylor's great, but Taylor's going to be the right tackle. But the left side of the line is a disaster. And here's what worries me just schematically, and Andy Reid will figure it out, of course. But Thuney's so much better in protection than Smith. Like, if you're going to go against the Jalen Carters of the world, on the right side, you can't just leave Smith alone. I think he's much more of a run blocker, masher type. So can Humphrey always help the left guard, whoever that is? You know what I mean? Like, you might have to help the right guard that you're paying too. Just protection, you got a little worse. But you did get younger, and I bet you get cap relief when it's all said and done. But you entered free when the day the Super Bowl ended. You needed 2 offensive linemen. Now you still need 2 offensive linemen.
The franchise tag deadline has come and gone. Sam Darnold not tagged. T. Higgins did get the tag. You talked about Odigizua as well. More to come with the fury and the action that is happening here before free agency. Devante Adams available. Barkley's got a new deal. We're going to cover all of it here. And a note on the Indianapolis Colts as well that I find very interesting in their quarterback situation. Coming up next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. Basically they have everything you need to keep your pet healthy and happy. And there's always Chewy boxes on my front step. My wife probably orders from Chewy from more than just about any other company
You get a lot too.
in the world. And so whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. And for frequent listeners to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, you might occasionally hear a chirp. And that's Larry Williamson household. And I imagine, look, we only have one cat, and we use Chewy all the time to get food and make sure we have our automated auto ship that saves us out of running out of food and treats for our cat. But I imagine they have quite a selection of bird seed as well.
It's crazy you brought this up because right before we hit record, my wife sent a family, like on Facebook, your memories from 8 years ago. Larry, 8 years ago today, became a Williamson while I was in Indianapolis.
Yes.
And so today is his anniversary in the Williamson household. Larry the bird. Yep.
Oh man, happy anniversary to Larry.
So I'm sure something from Chewy is arriving any minute for his anniversary present.
Nice. I hope he gets a great treat. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health, prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, in-person vet clinics, rolling out nationwide. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet healthy and happy. And right now you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com. Click the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. One more note on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. One more note on Larry the Bird. So March 5th apparently is his anniversary with the Williamsons, but he also has a hatch day. Birds don't have birthdays. They have hatch days. So he has 2 big days. So that one I don't know off the top of my head. And I don't know how we know that exactly, but on the calendar, there's Larry's
hatch day is. You're like, hey,
Larry, I think we estimated when they bought him. So when do you think he was born?
Okay.
I think we're within a week, hatch day. So yeah,
March
I'm sure something from Chewy will be coming in.
The day
March Day's anniversary.
Was adopted into the Williamson family. That's the really important day.
That's a big day. Yeah.
Another note on the Kansas City Chiefs. I wonder if they viewed a couple of their young offensive tackles they drafted recently that have had some struggles early in their career, which, young players do.
Yeah.
For a rookie to jump in and play left tackle in the NFL. I wonder if they viewed them as, well, let's just move.
Maybe they're a left guard.
Into guard. We don't have to worry about
protection guard guy. Yeah.
Protection, and they're really trying to figure out left tackle. And so that's another aspect to this because they do have some talent and some players they've drafted recently. So maybe look at this still as a need at tackle, and eventually them chasing tackle will fix their guard situation too.
And not that he's great, but they did play with Caliendo at left guard and got to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl wasn't pretty, but they got there with them.
And one more scouting note, and I think we might have touched on this after the Super Bowl, but Josh Sweat's got these 34.5-inch long arms. And you saw Joe Thuney, who's a really good player. He's an all-pro guard, saw him playing left tackle. But he's a reason he's a guard is because he's not as long of a player, has the shorter arms.
Perfect.
And you saw that struggle. So when you think, wow, why are we making such a big deal about arm length? And you think about a player like Will Campbell. Why is he a guard 100% to me in the NFL? You saw it in the Super Bowl. It's just, even if you're a really good player, that's something that a guy like Josh Sweat could take advantage of an all-pro like Joe Thuney when he's out there on the edge just because of the length advantage.
Yep. I was listening to Todd McShay's podcast, actually, and he was going through the O-line combine and said, there are some dudes that have had success in this league that don't have 34-inch arms. Joe Thomas, Penei Sewell, you wouldn't think of him. And he went on and on. Balaga. He had like 10 Slater for a lot of really high-quality names. But they all were over 33.
Yeah.
It's not like they were 31 and a half or 32 and a half. Maybe 33 is really the number if you're awesome,
34 is the ideal. 33 is the minimum. Like if you're under 33, the teams aren't going to mess with you. And they're certainly not drafting you in the top 10 to be a tackle.
Right. Maybe it works out or whatever. Yeah. And Thuney's a perfect example. I mean, he was not a good left tackle for them. He was a stopgap. He's a great left guard.
We saw the Dallas Cowboys do a deal with Osa Odigizua after getting the franchise tag. And I think that's what the franchise tag is about. You just like, look, we don't want to lose this player, but in good faith, we're trying to get a deal done and let's hammer out a contract. And if not, it's a solid payday for a year before that player hits free agency.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the franchise tag when it's used as it feels like it's weaponized right now for T. Higgins. And I can't imagine T. Higgins likes the situation he is. And getting the franchise tag for the second time, I think is just, it's something whenever the CBA gets done again, it's got to go away. Two tags. It's not good for the game. I don't think it's even that good for the teams. It's just one tag and then you're done, right? It's a weaponized situation, I think, in some ways at some point. And I was actually really glad to see that Sam Darnold didn't get the franchise tag by the Minnesota Vikings, because I felt like that would have in some ways kind of done him dirty, where he takes a backup salary, gives them way more than they bargained for as the starting quarterback this year, and then you slap the tag on them so you can try to get a pick or whatever it is. And so I was glad to see Sam Darnold didn't get the tag, and I was a little bit frustrated, and I'm sure T. Higgins is feeling the frustration of getting the franchise tag from the Cincinnati Bengals, even if he does want a deal to come back to block him from that again, potentially, it's just not what the franchise tag is for and should be about, in my opinion.
I tend to agree, and I'm sure he's not thrilled about it. He does get more this year than last year, and it's guaranteed, but you also eat up a year of your life. And I don't think that was the nature of the rule when it was put in, and I also don't think franchising kickers is what they had in mind whenever they made it up too. It's like the Declaration of Independence. Like, some of the rules have changed over the years, and it feels borderline unethical, to do that to a player 2 years in a row, to limit his freedom. You know what I mean?
Do you think I still think it's so unlikely that he comes back, but all signs point to that. Like, they
Higgins,
this deal done with Higgins in the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm not really sure what to make of it and what the end game is here, but I really feel like Higgins is going to be on another team and, probably potentially wreck some mock drafts if he ends up going to, a team where a lot of people are mocking wide receivers to him in the first round.
I think he'll be back. I think guys like Hendrickson won't. Hubbard retired today. They cut Kappa. I think they're going to listen to Burrow and keep these three there almost no matter what. And I'm not sure it's the right move. But
it's for sure 100% the wrong move.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
It's Hendrickson over Higgins all day long. Like, there's not even an argument for otherwise, right?
I mean, the defense has a chance to be even worse. And it was.
How are you going to be better than you were last year when you were throwing up 35 points a game against teams and couldn't stop anybody? I mean, madness.
And I also think Inarumo is a good coordinator that they got rid of. They're just blaming him for not developing all their early talent. I don't know. I think it's going to get messy in Cincy quick. And a year from now, we might be talking about Burrow on the trade block. I know that's crazy, but I don't think that's insane.
Davante Adams is officially released
out there.
And he is available. And it was pretty obvious he was going to get cut because he had this crazy contract where he's going to get $35+ million over the next 2 years. And, that wasn't going to happen. So the Jets cut Davante Adams. He's available. For Davante's sake, just don't chase Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers around.
Right.
Go somewhere else. But it feels like, he's waiting to see if Aaron Rodgers signs somewhere. I'm trying to think of the good fit. There was a story where you might want to go back home to the West Coast.
I got a couple for you. Yeah, because I just recorded Locked On Dynasty with Kate and Marcus. So we were talking about where do you want him to land for fantasy, et cetera, et cetera. And as soon as it happened, of course, I put a tweet out. The Steelers should call immediately. I don't know that if I were him, this would be my favorite spot. You don't even know who the quarterback is. Marcus threw out the Niners. But I said only if Ayuk's traded would that make sense to me. It seems like a bit much. But
they traded Debo. The 49ers could be a sneaky veteran wide receiver team because they traded Debo.
Mm-hmm.
They're still not exactly sure what Ricky Pearsall is, even though I think that's the replacement for Debo is Ricky Pearsall. So I think they're fine there. But Ayuk's still coming off the ACL, and what if he misses a month of the season? And Davante would be a short-term answer there. And Kyle Shanahan loves himself.
He's aggressive. Yeah.
He can't help it, like with wide receivers. He used to play wide receiver, and he's just, so you never know what he's going to do, and he'll pay too much sometimes for a wide receiver. He'll trade up and draft wide receivers. He surprised everybody with a Ricky Pearsall pick, right? That's just kind of his nature.
I called him greedy on the Dynasty podcast.
He's greedy.
And he should be, and they're trying to win the Super Bowl right now.
And
I get it.
The best tackle in the NFL. He wants the best running back in the NFL. He wants to draft first-round wide receivers all over the place. Don't be shocked if they draft like Luther Burden to pick 11. He's such a perfect Shanahan receiver. And Shanahan might be kicking himself. He's like, dang, why did I take a wide receiver last year? Because I even like this guy even more. I wish we could pick him at number 11. I mean, so don't be shocked if Shanahan gets that crush on Luther Burden in this year's draft. But
the two teams I keep coming back to that seem to be rumored heaviest are the two LA teams, though.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that makes a ton of sense. Established quarterbacks, West Coast. Doesn't have to be the man, but he's going to have a high responsibility, move the chains, and both will be great spots for him.
Yeah, but if you're really chasing a ring, if you want to chase a ring for your legacy at this point in your career, I would not go west or no super far west. I know they're in the west, but it's Chiefs or Bills, I think.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah,
they're a little more cash strapped, but I would take less and do that.
Yeah, right.
100%.
Next, let's talk Saquon Barkley. He's getting a bump after the Super Bowl run that he went on with the Philadelphia Eagles after just 1 year. The Eagles shedding some salary in some other places as well. An interesting offseason for the Super Bowl champs. And a note on Anthony Richardson's competition with the Colts. Next. Saquon Barkley, now the highest paid running back in the NFL, Matt. And this is, I think people are reading the running back market wrong. I see a lot of people say running backs are making a comeback, and there's going to be 3 running backs drafted in the first round now. And, that could be the case. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are showing you exactly how to play it with running backs. Give them some money. Short term, and don't spend a bunch of draft picks on it. Don't do long-term deals. It's basically year to year. And if Saquon falls off and becomes an old running back overnight, like tends to happen with running backs, whatever, they can cut him and they'll be fine. This isn't a long-term contract, but you're rewarding him while you're doing it. And unlike the 49ers with McCaffrey, you didn't have to trade a second, third, fourth, fifth round pick to get him. Unlike the Giants, when they drafted Barkley, you don't have to spend the second pick in the draft to get him. Unlike the Panthers, when they drafted McCaffrey, and guess what? The Panthers and Giants didn't win anything with their superstar running backs. Those running backs won later when they were plugged into an already fully furnished football team, right? And so are running backs more valuable, making a comeback a little bit? Maybe somewhat, but I think some teams are going to talk themselves into mistakes if that's the way they're looking at it. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are doing it exactly right. Get a crazy talented guy and don't pay a bunch of draft picks for it, and pay him short term while he's great.
I think that's extremely well said. I agree with 100% of it. And even to add to it, there might be a misconception post-draft that running backs are back. Well, it's just a really good running back. It's like a historically great running back class, and maybe last free agency class was a historically great free agency class. Jacobs, Henry, a coincidence, frankly.
It's like signing Saquon Barkley is a lot different than signing Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know. Najee Harris is going to break the bank this year.
Right. Yeah. And if he does, then you're reading it wrong. And I think not that he's not a good player, but Derrick Henry, when he's available, when Saquon Barkley is available, that's very different. And the other part of the running back stuff is the running back class is great. And the rest of the class is kind of like, it's not a big year, not a lot of blue chippers. So a lot of teams are going to be on the clock, and the highest graded player on the board is a running back.
Yeah, 100%. There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
Just back to the Eagles, though, and I'm not a contract expert, but I do know they do their contracts differently. They spend the most out of pocket money of any team in the league. And what's crazy is if you go to like over the cap and look at their 2027, 2028, they have so much cap space invested in players that aren't going to be there. Like, I don't know if that's ever going to come to roost, but their cash spending is an advantage. But Barkley's going to be in the books for probably way past the time that he's useful. But they're fine with it. They just, inflation keeps coming along. The cap keeps going up. They keep spending money now. And I also think there's a little bit of goodwill here. Do this right before free agency starts on the same day, basically, that you're cutting Bradbury and Slay, who have been, you know what I mean? Like,
and you, speaking of Josh Sweat earlier, Sweat's a free agent. Milton is a free agent. They're shedding a lot more cash than they're spending on Saquon Barkley.
There's a little bit of a human side here too. We just won the Super Bowl. It's not all bad. Not everybody's leaving. It's okay, guys. Our stars are going to be reimbursed properly.
According to Adam Schefter, Daniel Jones is the player most likely, and the logical fit, I think, was one of the terms he used, to be the competition quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson. And when I saw that, and I think a lot of Colts fans, when they saw this, were like, what? That doesn't move the needle for me at all. Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the reason, Matt. I think that the Indianapolis Colts want to bring in a quarterback who's a former first-round pick, who everybody knows his name, but that won't beat out Anthony Richardson. I think the point is that they don't want the other guy to beat out Anthony Richardson.
So we've talked about this a lot. I think there are 6 teams that don't have a quarterback. And then there's the Colts on their own little island that have to bring somebody in. You can't just roll with what you have. And they're the only team that I think that that's 100% true for. I mean, there's teams that need backups, but I mean, you need somebody to compete with the guy that's going to be there. That can't be a nobody. And I want him to be a runner. I don't want him to be Flacco. You want to run the Colts offense with a mobile quarterback. Like Fields to me is probably too good, too expensive. Jones is perfect. Run the exact same offense. He might beat out Richardson. He's had some success. You might catch lightning in a bottle and he's the next Darnold. Maybe. I think their coach is a very good offensive mind. If you're Jones, would you rather do that or would you rather go back to Minnesota with McCarthy?
Yeah. And do you think that McCarthy's not going to be ready and needs a year of incubation? Because I would rather play quarterback for the Vikings if I'm Daniel Jones.
Oh, yeah, and throw to Jefferson.
I think Darnold's for sure not going back to the Vikings.
I don't think so either. He was not franchised.
People say that he's going to sign not only I think it's Rich Eisen said one of the things he heard from multiple sources in Indianapolis was that Sam Darnold was going to sign a long-term contract with the Minnesota Vikings, which I think is kind of insane. And if that happens, New York Giants need to be on the phone with and I would offer the 3rd pick in the draft for JJ McCarthy from the New York Giants, right?
Yeah.
But
I think Darnold's gonna be a Raider.
Yeah, the Rams thing is over because Stafford's staying. Yeah. Could he end up in Tennessee?
That's Tennessee, I thought too, right?
Yeah, he's going to be the belle of the ball, right? And he could end up getting a pretty lucrative contract.
He'll do pretty well for himself. Yeah,
he's the dude. He's out there, and so not the Vikings. So for Daniel Jones, is competing with Anthony Richardson a better spot than staying with the Vikings, potentially having a better offense and competing with JJ McCarthy for being a stopgap? I think
Daniel Jones is going to be sought after a little more than he should be, or maybe people think.
More than I think, probably. But I've been kind of low on Daniel Jones for a long time.
I don't think anyone's high on him, but
I mean, the Giants were clearly making a mistake by not making other plans and at least bringing in competition at quarterback. So at least the Colts are doing it right, where they're like, well, we got to bring in competition for our quarterback, and it should be somebody better than Drew Lock, like the Giants did with their quarterback.
Weird tinfoil hat thing. Any chance they would trade Richardson? Like one of my Steeler fans said, what if the Steelers sign Fields and trade for Richardson? I'm like,
if the Colts are willing to trade Richardson, then you don't want him.
I was thinking that too. I mean, and basically the question was because he tapped out in that game and his teammates don't like him anymore and he's got to get out. I'm like, I don't know that bridge is burned. I'm not sure if Richardson's officially a bust yet. I mean, by all accounts, he's, to people I talked to, we brought him up to Combine. He's working diligently with one of those quarterback gurus that he's paying out of his pocket, and
Josh
that's paid
Allen's
off.
guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what he should be doing. If
Yeah.
he wasn't, I'd be really critical of the guy.
Yeah, that's what I was telling. Who was Josh Allen's guy? Go talk to him.
Do the exact same thing, right?
Doing that, that's doing it right. If we gave Fields like 9 chances, we got to give Anthony Richardson at least one more shot, right?
6 more, right? Absolutely. And even Lance is going to get a chance, right?
Lance might be in the AFL before long, or whatever they call that league these days.
That's not crazy.
It goes to the bottom of every depth chart. I mean, he's been in the 2 worst situations possibly for him, just because of being allowed to play too. Bad
Dak
luck.
Prescott gets hurt, and you still don't even get in.
Right, exactly. Worst team he could have gone to from the 49ers. Well, first of all, he goes to the 49ers. He was like, oh, it looks like a great spot. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. They want to win now. They're not super worried about developing the Ross quarterback first-round prospect in history. And they're not going to, And then you get traded to a guy where they've got not only a good starter, but a good backup. And the
good starter gets hurt. You finally get your opportunity, and you still don't get in. Right.
Rough go there.
Lots of little nuggets around the league right now. It's kind of a fun time.
Speaking of that class, like Mac Jones is an interesting quarterback that nobody's talking about.
I don't think he stinks either. I just wish he was. I think he's built for 1985.
But I mean, he's at least got to be in the conversation for a competition stopgappy quarterback somewhere. But his name is. I think people.
I think he made himself a little bit of money in Jacksonville when Lawrence got hurt.
I also think legitimately people don't like him. I think that the word
that could be true too.
This guy's not someone you want to have in your locker room.
I've also heard people might offer something for Pickett or Joe Milton, or like a couple of these other backups floating around out there. Maybe
that Joe Milton little teaser at the end of the season.
Yeah,
that net,
dude. I get asked about it every day for the Steelers. Just trade for Joe Milton. I'm like, I don't know that's your problems are solved there, man.
It's interesting though. He's one of the more interesting because of how physically talented he is. That would make more sense to the Steelers than Anthony Richardson would, because obviously
if you have if you sign Fields and send them a 5th round pick for Milton, I'm like, I would understand it.
And it would be a day 3,
but I'm not sending a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick.
Right. And you could spend that same pick on a pretty decent backup style quarterback option in this draft, because this draft has a lot of those types.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's another thing that's difficult for a team. Like, do you trade for Milton or just draft? Tyler Shuck's not going to be super late day 3 guy anymore, but Curtis Rourke will be, or I don't
know. The Patriots are going to give you Milton for nothing, though. I mean, they must have loved him when they drafted him. I know he's not the starter, but they're not going to take. They need to make a profit on the deal.
If this was I think teams are smarter now. If this was 15 years ago, Milton would get a 3rd round pick from someone this offseason.
Oh, absolutely. Scott Mitchell, or one of those other guys. Yeah, right. I saw a flash. I'm going to give you whatever you want.
Let us know what you think. What is your team willing to trade for Joe Milton?
And let's talk guards. That's what we did today. Yeah.
Mock drafts coming. We are going to finish the defensive back 7 portion of the combine that we haven't covered yet because we had so much news to get to today. That means we're going to push the mailbag back to Friday, unless there's some more huge news.
I just think there's going to be news every 24 hours. Yeah.
So, pre-free agency. This is a great time of year in the offseason for NFL football fans, getting a lot of nuggets and seeing how their new team's vision is going to be put together. But get those questions into us anyways at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL for whenever our mailbag is going to be this week or next week. And you can also drop a question on the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.